Hello, everyone, and welcome. We're being joined here today by a former AFLW umpire, Libby Toovey. Thank you, Libby, for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Cooper.
No worries. So, obviously, you were a former AFLW umpire. How did that come about into that role of becoming an AFLW, and what kind of aspirations did you have to become an umpire in the first place?
Yeah, so I started umpiring footy when I was in year 9 or year 10, which was 2005 or 6, and I'd always wanted to play football, but back in that time, there weren't many opportunities for women my age or girls my age to play footy. So I thought, well, I'll still get involved in the game and I'll try umpiring. And so I literally just called up my local league, which was the Southern Metro Junior Football League, called them up, and then basically 2 weeks later I was umpiring an under-10s game. Of little like kids running around just chasing the ball, and it was a lot of fun. And then just year after year I got better and better, and in 2000 and I think it was 15 or 16 I made it to the VFL, which was amazing. I tried the year before but didn't make it, then came back fitter and made it the following year. And then a few years into that I was very lucky to be able to umpire the first season of AFLW, which was a phenomenal experience. So all up I probably umpired about 12 years. And then once I'd finished umpiring, I became a mentor for up-and-coming female umpires, which I was doing up until this year.
So speaking of this year, what happened and how did this sudden departure come about?
Yeah, so I was lucky enough to get a job at the AFL this year. I actually wrote my own job description because my former boss, Adam Davis, I called him up at the middle of last year and said, I'm taking the time off. You know, I'm a teacher by trade, but I'm taking a year off to try something different. Is there anything I can do to help in the AFL? And he said, yeah, write your own job and we'll see what we can do, which was phenomenal. So I wrote a job called Education and Inclusion Officer, which was basically trying to educate people about inclusion in umpiring, because if you look at the umpires, you know, on the TV on the weekend, there's not many people that look different, or, you know, they all look, my dad liked to say, they all look like accountants. So we want to see a bit of diversity in there, because everyone and anyone can be an umpire. So I started that job. The job title became Female Talent Scout, which I started in January this year. And then unfortunately, 5 weeks into the job, they fired me because I told them, hey, I think there's systematic abuse of umpires, of female umpires happening. I don't really think it's being addressed. I think we need to address it, and we need to address it now, because there are people, women, girls, young kids in danger, and it doesn't seem like anyone's doing anything about it. And in their mind, this was not part of my role, even though I was there to promote females to become umpires, to enable more umpires to be female in the highest level. But they said, no, Libby, you can't do that. We're going to have to tell you to go away, which was a shock, because I honestly don't understand how me telling them that women are being abused is not part of my job. And yeah, from there, I had no sort of leg to stand on. I couldn't claim anything. I couldn't say, well, whoa, like, hang on, is the right thing? Are you sure you want to do this? They'd already made up their mind, I think, the moment I kind of brought up the fact that I didn't think enough was happening. And as someone I'm a teacher, so I know a lot about how to keep people safe. I know a lot about educating people. You know, I'm a teacher, so I do English and history, but, you know, I've got a lot of background in umpiring and encouraging people to umpire. For them to not necessarily see the value that I could bring in that role is really disappointing and really heartbreaking, because it's something that I've been doing for 17 years. And, you know, absolutely no warning was given. I was brought into an office with 2 HR people, one of them being my boss, who didn't even hire me. My other boss hired me. So I had 2 bosses, and one of them was nowhere to be seen in my termination. And yeah, it was basically like, off you go, you're going home today. It's like, whoa.
So fair to say you felt betrayed by the people you thought that had you in a position to do a role and then be let go for, trying to do something in a positive way and then shown the door, basically.
Yeah, definitely. I think my only mistake in the whole situation is that I trusted my boss and I trusted the general manager of umpiring, who ultimately fired me. They thought they knew me, I guess, or they thought they had hired someone that was just willing to sit back and let stuff happen. But I think in my, moral obligation to make sure it's a safe environment for everyone to be in football, I couldn't sit back and just let people that I know have abused women continue in the role, even though they are right now, and have people that I've mentored literally having panic attacks because of their umpiring or feeling very uncomfortable at training. Like, now, in my mind, there's no one to advocate for these umpires, because that used to be my role. I used to be like, yep, all right, let me see what I can do. I'll talk to someone. And then I would talk to someone and it would go nowhere. And it seems, unfortunately, at the AFL, it seems like complaints are made or people have issues and then they just don't go anywhere. Nobody does anything about it, because if they did, it would be a bad look for the game.
So what has happened since all this has transpired after the day you were let go? How's the last few weeks after those days and even to now been going? How's it been for you?
Yeah, it's been, like, personally, it's very up and down. Like, I thought I would have this dream job of mine for 2 years at least. It was a 2-year contract, and then within just over a month to be fired. It's a bit of it's a shock, definitely. I've tried to stay positive and use this as a platform to promote umpiring, and to let everybody know that it's actually not, the environment for umpires is not good at the moment. We're down 6,000 umpires across the country, and we only have 2,000 female umpires versus almost 90,000 female players. So there's a lot of women in the game, but none of them really want to be umpires. So I've tried to use this as a real positive to try and highlight, I guess, the inaction by the AFL in really trying to change the culture of umpiring and to be a female umpire. And unfortunately, I've also had to kind of go down the legal route as well, because I thought it was quite unfair that they fired me straight away, didn't even give me a warning, didn't even give me a chance to, like, sort of say, well, can we hold off now? Do I have to go home today? Can we talk about it a bit more? So I had a Fair Work mediation last week, which was unsuccessful. So we'll try again to see if a member for the Fair Work Commission can sort something out. If not, it will have to go into the courts. So I don't exactly know what that looks like. I've got to find a lawyer to help me in that situation. But yeah, it's really sad that it's come to this, I think.
So who were the goals ever to be? You said it started when the AFLW started, that you were umpiring then. Was there ever talk about when you either got the role you were in or around that stage when you started doing AFLW that you could potentially progress even further to the AFL ranks? Obviously, Alani T, or formerly known as Gluftus, is in the only women umpire in the AFL system at the moment. Was there ever talk about potentially going to those grades over time, or soon possibly?
Definitely. So I did AFLW, and the goal was always to be an AFL umpire at the men's level. But when I made it to AFLW, I realised my goal has changed. So I realised that the women playing AFLW, or the players, were having way more fun than I was umpiring. So I'd it had become, unfortunately, not a very nice environment for me to be in, I guess, to be an umpire. And I just wasn't as enjoying it as much. Like, I used to train with the AFL umpires. I was definitely on the pathway to become an AFL umpire, but I realised that the journey that I saw going forward was not one that would fulfil me as a person. It wasn't as joyful as I wanted it to be. It was becoming too hard. And then when I saw the players, AFLW players playing, most of which I'd umpired when they were teenagers, I thought, I have to play. Like, now is my chance to play. I'm 27. I've given umpiring a red hot crack. I'll still stay involved. I'll still umpire every now and then, and I'll still mentor up and coming female umpires. But, now I want to have fun rather than be an elite athlete. I want to have fun and play football, which I've been doing for the last 4 years.
So I've got some umpiring general questions for you. So what was one of your favourite things about being an umpire?
I think I always used to say, like, you have the best seat in the house being an umpire. I get to watch a game of football and just blow a whistle every now and then and get to see some pretty cool marks, get to be involved in some pretty cool games like AFLW. I travelled around the country doing national championships. I went to South Africa and helped with AFL South Africa over there when I was at uni. So I think having to have those experiences, and then also the people you meet in those experiences as well. I've met, some amazing people who I'm still friends with that are currently helping me out right now in this situation. AFL umpires are helping me out. People that have worked at the AFL who have also, unfortunately, either been pushed out or burnt out of their roles are helping me to try and finally kind of change the culture. So I think it's, the experiences and being able to, umpire a game on the MCG was phenomenal. And then having incredible people that you meet along the way. Because the umpire community is beautiful.
Sorry, go. Yeah. No, so just going back to what you're saying about the AFL, with everything that's happened in the last few months. What is your end goal out of this? Like, obviously, what happened, you didn't expect to happen and didn't want to happen. Through all this now that's currently happening, what is your ideal end goal that you're trying to get out of this in the end? Is it to go back into it? Is it to make a mess stand and make a stand? Like, what's your type of goal that you're trying to get out of this?
Like, I think first and foremost, I just want football to be a safe place for everybody. So to be safe for female umpires, for players, for everyone. And at the moment, from what I've seen, it doesn't look like the people that are in the AFL understand that it is not a safe place for everybody. That not everybody feels included and not everybody is having a good time. And then when people do say, hey, this has happened to me, or I've been abused, or, I've been sexually assaulted by, my coach, the AFL, what I've seen, has not taken it further, has not actually owned that and said, oh my gosh, this is awful, let's help you and deal with that. So at the moment, there's no regulatory body that oversees the AFL. So it means that they can get away with everything. So there's no government agency that looks into the AFL and goes, oh, you've got, something happening here and something happening here. So the end goal is to have some sort of regulatory body that oversees the AFL, so that when people do come forward with allegations of abuse, allegations of discrimination, allegations of racism, it's not the AFL that's investigating themselves. There's a independent body that holds them accountable, because at the moment they're running their own show. And it's, you see on the news, if you just look up AFL on the news, it's in turmoil. And it's just all these things that have been buried are coming out to light. And I think I just also want the AFL, whether it's Gil McLachlan or whether it's Andrew Dillion, to apologise for not listening to us, because nowhere in this time have I been listened to of my concerns. I've wanted to meet with Gil McLachlan and Andrew Dillion. I've emailed a few times and said, I really want to meet with you to discuss what people have been telling me in the last 3 months. But they, for whatever reason, don't want to meet with me. I don't think I'm that scary. And yeah, just want to have a real honest conversation and say, like, I don't think you understand the severity of what's happening or how bad it is. Like, I just want to tell you and I want to help. But unfortunately, when I said that 3 months ago, they fired me.
So in those messages you said you tried to email them or however you communicated to them, did they ever even respond back to you in those times between sending out an email or message and then being let go? In between all that, did they ever get back to you at all for those type of things?
I've sent probably 4 or 5 emails, and I've been responded to twice. First was when I initially got fired, and Andrew Dillion replied to me saying, oh, we're doing all these amazing things. We've got $5 million funding. We've got Lisa Laurie in this position. We've got Debbie Lee doing this. And my response was, well, Lisa was the one that fired me, and I've emailed Debbie to tell her my concerns, and she's not replied. So in my opinion, the AFL think that throwing money at things will help rather than actually going to the root cause of things and educating people on the ground to say, no, women can be umpires too. And I also emailed Andrew Dillion last week, and I have a reply from him yesterday that I need to read, but it's very similar. Thank you for telling us these allegations. Go through our integrity unit, and here's all the amazing things we're doing. Now, some of the things are great, but when I have female umpires who are umpiring right now telling me that they have to remind people not to get changed in front of them in the change rooms literally last week and have to remind them that you need to be considerate of females last week, what they're doing is not working at the moment.
So what would you feel that they need to do to improve?
I think you need a very rigorous education program to pretty much have a couple of people go around to every single community league in the nation and have a program that's about inclusion and education, because there are still, unfortunately, people within these community leagues and within state league and at the AFL who do not believe women can umpire. So the fact that we only have 1 female field umpire at the current level, at the top, and 3 goal umpires, it's 2.6% of the elite level umpiring population are female. So 97.4% are male, but women make up 50% of the population. I was able to umpire AFLW. I may have made it to AFL if the environment was better, but women are not getting the chance to even succeed at the highest level because of inherent belief that it's just not possible.
Now, going back to what we were talking about before with the umpiring, how do you feel the standard of umpiring is right now? Because obviously it gets talked a lot about the rule changes every year. How do you feel the standard of umpiring in general has been this year? Do you feel it's dropped?
I do feel it's dropped. I've watched the football, and I think, there's a blatant free kick and there's no whistle gets blown. On the weekend, there was a high tackle and nobody blew the whistle. So I think the umpires are very, very confused at who's in charge because it's, this brand new 4 umpire system where you're swapping over every 20 metres or every 30 metres.
So do you feel the 4th umpire's made it even worse? Yeah.
I think, and I said this to the head of umpiring at the AFL when I worked there, I said, I think they're going to get bored. I think 4 umpires is too many because you literally, the 4th umpire sometimes is just sitting in the 50, twiddling their thumbs, and then the ball suddenly comes and you've got to be alert and you're going to miss things if you're not constantly umpiring. So I think it's confused a lot of people, and it's confused the umpires themselves, because nobody knows who's in charge. It's almost like too many cooks in the kitchen.
Yeah. So hypothetically, there would be some decisions where an umpire in the 50 hypothetically says hasn't paid a high tackle or anything. Then an umpire 70 meters away pays it. Now sometimes you could have a better angle. Is that just like an example that you're talking about, that they don't know what they're doing when one person in the range hasn't called it and then someone 70 meters away has, or vice versa?
Yeah, so it's almost like nobody knows who's got the play. So it's like, who's in charge here? Who's going to blow the whistle for this free kick? And then nobody does, because they don't want to make a mistake and get a cross on their feedback form. But in not blowing the whistle, like, you've missed a free kick. So it's that communication of knowing who's in charge or who's got the play. And I think it's just utter confusion, it looks like, just from what I've seen. Like, I know so many of those umpires, and they are phenomenal umpires. But if you're confused at who's in control, then all that ability can go out the window, because you're like, oh, do I blow my whistle or does somebody else? And then the crowd gets confused and frustrated, and the players don't know what to do. And then it can lead to injury, and it can lead to people getting hurt.
Now, there's one example that I want to get your opinion on. There was, I don't know if you've seen, it was in Adelaide. It was the Crows and the Pies. It was in the last quarter when Nathan Murphy was going for a mark, and Darcy Fogarty for the Crows went back in at the back of the fly and smashed him in the head with the ball. No free was paid. He had blood dripping down his nose. And then seconds later, I don't know how the play, it ended up getting onto the wing. Jordan DeGoey was about to pick up the ball, and then you had the doctor with Murphy, going off the blood rule. One, they didn't call the blood rule. Two, they didn't pay the free. And three, then Geordie was picking up the ball, and he would have picked it up about 10 metres near the boundary on his own, near where the doctor, and the player that ended up being concussed in the end from that incident. And then they didn't pay a free. And then Geordie kicked the ball away from the doctor to, obviously they didn't get run into. And then, so the ball went out of bounds and they paid to Libby. Did you see that in that particular play? No.
No, I didn't see it. But, I think a few...
It just it gets to the confusion like part of things, that we were talking about before. And
it's forgetting... It seems like umpires are forgetting the process, If there's... a doctor needs to come on the ground and it's near the play, just stop the play. Like,
that's what they didn't in that place. They just let it keep going. He had blood, nothing.
Yeah. And if there's blood streaming down the face, probably a free kick.
That's true,
and I think it's the confusion and lack of, just consistency between all of the umpires that's making it really hard for them. And they're trying their best, but the rules keep changing. Concussion, if it's, I saw the Melbourne player almost got 2 weeks for trying to spoil the ball, and he accidentally
Van
got
Rooyen,
someone in the head. That's football. If you go like that, if you get their head, it's not on purpose, but like, it's almost we're swinging so far that way that we've forgotten, these players since they were 5 or 6 have been taught to spoil like that. And, he got part of the ball, but also got part of the head. And if you're going to get 2 weeks for accidentally spoiling someone and touching their head on the way through, it's almost like an overreaction that people won't want to play anymore because they don't know what the rules are.
Yeah. With that one, I don't know if you've seen the still shot. I might even have a photo of it on here. If I still have it on, you have a look. Let me see. Here it is. So there it is there for the people that don't know what we're talking about, but they should. See, it's not even his fist that hit Charlie Ballard. And Charlie Ballard did get a knock to the back of the neck in the general play before this. I think it was a couple of quarters earlier. So it kind of instigated probably where he ended up having to get stretched off because he had a couple of hits in that area. And then to give him 2 weeks. And then they appeal it at the tribunal, and then it stays at that. Then they had to go to the appeals board. Do you feel this should be changed in that area as well?
Yeah, I think... I don't know exactly who runs the tribunal.
Michael Christian's the MRO guy.
Yeah, and I think, it's so hard because, last year that wouldn't have been 2 weeks. Like, that would have just been play on. 5 years ago, you wouldn't even have a conversation about it.
No.
but the changing nature of the game and the rules literally being changed every season, like I don't know the last time there wasn't a rule change in the new season. Whereas you look at other sports like soccer, I don't know if there's been a rule change in the last 100 years besides having a camera near the goal line. Or tennis, has there been a rule change there? So the need to change the rules shows me that, well, what's going on? Like, why do we need to change the rules? Do we just need to change how we teach people how to play football so that you're not in, risk of getting concussion every week? Like, I play football. I've never been concussed. I've broken a finger. I don't even wear a mouth guard because I know that I know how to play properly because I've watched the game so much because I've been an umpire and then I watch it on TV and I know exactly how to use my body to protect myself, protect my head. I think we're forgetting how to coach players so they protect themselves and protect other people.
I've just got a few other picture examples of non-free kicks, controversial calls. Yeah, this was in the same Adelaide Collingwood game. So in the same last quarter, Ash Johnson, the Collingwood player, the Adelaide player, Jordan Butts, got his arm clearly around Ash Johnson's shoulder right in front of the goal square. That was just one example that was not even given. It just shows unbelievable calls. Because there's been some pretty poor calls in general this year as well. But then again, sometimes you said the rules could be affected. Now, there's another one here I want to show you too. It was early in the year. It's more generally about certain players getting what some people like to call protected species. This is an example of Paddy Dangerfield. Obviously, you're a Geelong fan, which we'll get to. He got copped Ruben Jimmy accidentally in the face. But more to the point of not so much saying he should deserve weeks for that or anything severe, but it wasn't even looked at the MRO. Like, it wasn't looked at all. And there's, for example, Toby Green, for example, if he did that, even though he's had a history of it, he'd probably get crucified. That was not even covered on any show, any AFL show at all. It was briefly mentioned for 30 seconds on one of the Fox Footy shows. But nothing was said. They didn't say he should be suspended or that's a terrible look. Nothing like that. But if someone like Toby Green had done that, as shown in the past, he gets crucified. The inconsistencies. What do you feel about certain players that don't get talked about? For instance, they do so similar incidents to other people. Some get crucified for the same thing. And if you're a favourite player like Danger, I know you're a Geelong fan, but top names and nothing really gets talked about. Or there's some form of an excuse played it for, they didn't mean it. But if Toby did that, it's no, he didn't mean it. And the narrative is different.
Yes, and I think it's such a good point to bring up for every single player. We have Paddy Dangerfield's highly respected. Toby Green, unfortunately, I'm not a big fan of his because he shoved Matt Stevic last season and got weeks for it. I think, unfortunately, in life and in football, our past behaviour impacts our present behaviour. So, unfortunately for Toby, in the past, he's not necessarily been a very nice player to other players, but also to umpires. And it can impact how you view that person. Now, it's not on purpose at all. Like, the umpires stay very unbiased and very, aware of staying very neutral. But if you've got a player like Toby Green or someone constantly yapping at you and having a go at you all the time, or putting feet up to people, or literally shoving you in a game, it doesn't bode well. Just in terms of the umpire wanting to be helpful. Like, I always tell everyone in my team, just be nice to the umpires. Like, they've blown the whistle, it's not going to change. I think, for Paddy Dangerfield, you need to look at that. You need to look at it because it's dangerous. Now, the intent is obviously not to hurt that player. And I think with Toby Green, he sort of was face on and put his thing out, which he could have elected not to. With Paddy, looked like he was going for the mark and his foot just happened to come up. So it's, it is intent. What's the intent behind it? Do you have to do it or can you not? Can you change how you do it? I know Toby Green, I don't think has ever done it again, so it worked. But it's, I think it comes down to, why do you want to play football? Is it, to get the best out of yourself? Is it to hurt other people? Is it to complain to the umpire? Are you in it for a team? Geelong is a great example. We've had a lot of success because we work as a team and had great leaders and showing, what it's like to be a leader on and off the field. Then you see other teams and you can just tell that everyone's in it for themselves and are there just to make a name for themselves, which that's not how, I play football. That's not how any of the women's games I've umpired have played football, or anyone that I play on the weekend. I think it's a cultural thing that some people are just out there because they're angry and they want to hurt people. And as an umpire, those games were hard to umpire because, it felt like I was just babysitting fully grown men, not to punch each other. But then when I umpired women's, it was like, oh my God, they're just here to play football. Looking at the reasons why people want to play and then why they do, those type of things on the football field, why Buddy Franklin puts up his elbow and gets 2 or 3 weeks or maybe a week versus, hey, just you're here to play football. You're here to go for the ball. We're not here to hurt people.
Now, as someone that's been involved in umpiring, what is dissent to you?
Dissent is anything that's got a demonstrative towards the umpire or threatening behaviour.
Keep going.
So it's changed a lot since my time, and rightfully so. I think players don't need to have a go at the umpire. Like I said before, the whistle's blown; they're not going to change their mind. You're not going to be able to talk them around to go, oh no, actually, it's your free kick, not theirs. The umpire has a job to do. The job is to pay the free kicks, to adjudicate the rules, and to keep you safe. Part of that job is not to crowd control and not to manage your behaviour as a player. As a teacher, that's what I do in the classroom. I manage behaviour. But on the footy field, we have a whistle to manage behaviour. We're not there to get abused verbally or to be shouted at and go, what the hell? What's that? You did a bad thing, or the umpire maybe got it wrong, but you missed the free kick, or you missed the goal, you kicked a point, or you kicked it out of bounds on the full. You made a mistake. So umpires are allowed to make a mistake. They don't make many, but this season it seems like they unfortunately do because a bit of confusion. And not knowing who's in charge. But I think first and foremost, you don't need to abuse an umpire or show dissent because they're just doing their job. You're just doing your job of getting paid a lot to play football, and you are a role model first and foremost. You need to show those 5 or 6 year olds that are watching you on a Friday night or even a Thursday night to show this is how we play football. We don't yell and scream. We don't, on the weekend, a Collingwood player dacked
Aaron Cadman,
dacked him. I'm dealing with that with my year 9 students dacking each other. I don't expect to see it on national TV by 20-something-year-old grown men being dacked on the TV. It's like, are we that immature as footballers that we feel like we have to dack somebody? It's just not. It's not a good look. It's disrespectful. And if they did that at school, they'd get suspended.
In terms of dissent, I've got a few examples I want to ask you about. Pointing at the screen and literally scratching your head like this and shaking your head, would you class that as dissent? Because that probably sounds like a little bit of an overreaction at least. Because there's been some instances where they've done that and they've paid it. Yeah.
My opinion, no. I think it's you're allowed to go, but look there, that's a bit weird. Because you're not, dissent in my mind is, you're personally attacking the umpire. That you're making the umpire feel uncomfortable or unsafe by, pointing is a good one. If anyone ever pointed at us, it would be 50 metres straight away. If anyone ever swore at us, 50 metres straight away. But I think, again, we're leaning so far the other way that people just get frustrated and they just yell at the umpire anyway, rather than understanding, hey, we understand emotion and people get, emotional in playing, but don't direct it towards the umpire, like direct it towards yourself because you got a free kick against you, and then do better in the next play.
So there's one example recently that there was a game recently, I can't remember who the teams were, but one of the captains, now they generally say the captains are the ones that, can chat to the umpire and the other guys just leave it be, or girls. But there was a captain, I can't remember what team it was. They walked up to Razor Ray and they went up to him and said something, and he did like a talk to the hand type gesture. Do you feel that in that Ray example, I'm sure there's other examples, that's one I could just think of top of my head, that the reason that someone like Ray would not cop abuse, but, get asked about, and him doing a kind of a gesture that you would say is Dissent in the other way is a bit disrespectful from them to when it's just the captain asking a question or whatever they're asking?
Yeah, no, like I'm not sure if I haven't seen the example, but I think, like we are told the captain can come and talk to you, or you as the captain go and talk to the umpire. I think if you have a concern, or you're like, hey, can you watch the holds off the ball because they keep happening? Like you have to take that on. You can't just ignore the concern of the captain and the other players, because like if you do that, they'll just get further frustrated, and it will build, tension and frustration throughout the match that can then lead to spot fires and melees further on. So you do need to take the time to respect the players that you are umpiring, because if you show respect to them, the hope is that they show respect to you. And I think because umpires aren't necessarily humanized, then we don't really see them as humans to respect. We don't really celebrate or see, recently Simon Meredith did 450 games.
Yep.
Now, that was nowhere really on the TV when I saw it. It was on the social media for umpiring pages, but nowhere really on the AFL pages, nowhere on AFLW. So, like, how can we show respect and gratitude when we don't even know who the people are that are umpiring us, and don't even know that this guy's done 450 games, multiple grand finals? Like, how can we celebrate that and be, I guess, respectful and proud and, be in awe of that when it's not even publicised?
I think one thing, I'm not sure if you've seen this, I think it was the Simon Meredith one. There could have been one of the other, Brett Roseby, it might have been as well, one of the senior umpires. I don't know if this is a Channel 7 thing or if this is a BT Brian Taylor thing, but he did recently go into the umpires' room, which he's done a few times over the last year and a bit. He actually went into the rooms and spoke to the umpires, one of the recent night games, and he actually spoke to, I think it was Brett Roseby, I think it was, who had a milestone coming up or just had a milestone, and he spoke to him. But as you said, at least there's something there. But the commentary on those BT's been one to go into the umpires' rooms a few times and even just mention on the coverage. But outside of that, I don't really hear anything about it anywhere else.
Yeah, like it was community umpiring round last week in the AFL. Now, you ask someone on the street who watches footy, did you know it was community umpiring round? They go, nah, no idea. Because it's like, it's nowhere. It's only on in the silo of umpiring channels. It's like, that's great. Like, we as umpires know that it's community umpiring round. But like you, Joe Blow down the street, that watches every weekend, fanatic Collingwood supporter, he doesn't know that it's community umpiring round, because it's almost like they're so scared to advertise it in case people abuse umpires and go, so they just don't do it for fear of repercussions or negative repercussions.
Comments and that,
Yeah, but
I think there was a tweet as well. I think the AFL Twitter page, I think it was something to do with umpiring in the last 2 weeks. It might have been the example you're talking about, but even then it's not. Even it is, it might be a red tweet here and there or mini post somewhere.
Yeah, and it's with all sports. Like, it's with all sports. But, we literally can't have a game without the umpires. And like I said before, around the country, we're 6,000 umpires short. Women don't want to be umpires. They'd rather play. It's the statistics show that. And then you have, issues with umpiring if it's not that consistent and people are yelling at the crowd, at a game they're just hurling abuse, and then, the person next to you is 14-year-old umpire and they go, oh, maybe I don't want to do this. So the culture around footy and umpiring, is a negative one because we've unintentionally made it okay to literally abuse umpires on the weekend. And then you bring that into local league, it's okay to yell abuse and hurl abuse at umpires. And then if you're a female umpire, then God knows what is going to be said to you. And then if your coaches also don't think that you're a very good umpire if you're a female, then they themselves will unintentionally abuse you because they're like, well, you don't really belong here, so let's make it difficult for you. So like what I was trying to do at the AFL was really promote umpiring at a national level, promote it so that women want to join, but everybody wants to join. And I did, I volunteer at an organisation called Lord Summers Camp, and I've done 2 umpire workshops in the last 3 months at these camps. Just volunteer off my own bat because umpiring for me made me confident, gave me skills, and I was able to develop into this person. So I've been able to recruit 4 or 5 umpires from those sessions alone. That's not good. Even employed by the AFL, and I'm doing it for free because 1, I love footy, 2, we need umpires, 3, it really helps you to be a good human being. Now, my job was to get more females in the role, or in, footy. When I realised that it's not very safe for women to be umpiring, it became incredibly difficult to try and fulfil that. When I told my bosses that it's not safe, they didn't want to hear it and they fired me. So it's really, as umpires, you're going into the lion's den kind of thing. And if we're not removing the lions from the den, which is not happening because there's people that are still coaching, that are still out there, that are notoriously very bad, and everybody knows who they are, then why would anyone want to do that?
Going back to some of the rules, we're talking about the Dissent rule. The stand rule, how do you feel on that rule? Do you like it? Should it be there? Okay.
I don't mind. I think it's a bit of overkill again. With so many rules are coming in that, it's almost hard to play just how you want to play. We don't have it in the league that I play in. So, and we still get goals. We still win. I think you got to think about why you've got that rule in. Why does the player need to stand completely still? Why can't they move around a little bit? It just seems like, again, we're going so far one way that we've forgotten the rationale behind what the rules are.
Now, and on a positive note, what rules would you put in place if you were the main person making the rules? We mentioned the rules about too many being changed. What rules would you flat out say, this is what we're going to have? And if you were the person in charge and made the final call, what would you put in charge?
I think, rather than putting in rules, I'd just go back to what the simple rules are. You don't need many rules in football to make it work. And I think there are far too many rules that are just nonsensical.
So what rules would you take out then? There's some that are there already.
I think the stand rule, deliberate, that's sometimes it's paid, sometimes it's not paid, and it's within the game. You're like, what? That's the same game, and that one was paid, but that wasn't. I think we've forgotten that the laws and the rules are put in place, through the spirit of the game. And so we've forgotten the spirit of the game, which is to let them play football. And when there's rules that are inhibiting people to play football properly, when you have to stand there or you need to nominate your ruck, we know it's going to be pretty much the same ruckman for the whole game. So every time, nominate, put your hand up. We know it's you. We know it's Tom Hawkins in the 50. It's always going to be him. then we know it's Radicalier in the deep 50. Like, we know it's going to be them. It's almost like the rules are getting a bit too pedantic, because, people, Fox Footy complains that it's too low scoring or there's too many stoppages. So then they bring in a rule, the 666, so you can't, flood the back line.
And now they're starting to exploit or try and exploit the best way they can by putting a player on the edge of the 50 in the mid on the wing. So, for example, the wingman might be really at half forward or half back, you're just in the edge of the centre.
Yeah, so I think go back to basics is my first and foremost advice. I was watching highlights from the 1980s footy today, and they're just running free, having the best time, putting their bodies on the line. Probably a bit stupid these days, but we play football to have fun and to run and to kick goals. It's for Carlton to have 10 points up until half-time last week. Like, people were up in arms about AFLW scores, 10 points to half-time, and then you see it in the men's game, and I don't hear much complaining. Like, yes, they were able to get goals after, but like, there's a reason it's only 10 points. People are very good at defending, but what's stopping them from scoring? We don't need to change the rules. You just need to instill confidence in the players to kick goals. But if there's so many rules happening, then players don't know which way's up, and then the umpires don't know which way's up, and then everyone gets confused and frustrated, and then nobody really wants to be involved much.
And you just quickly, because you mentioned the AFLW, the scoring, do you feel that they should be playing on the grounds that the size of grounds I'm all referring to that they're playing on now, or do you feel they should be playing on not small grounds, but smaller grounds to help the scoring be increased, or do you feel that it will, over time, on these level size grounds, like say the GMHBAs, those type of grounds that they may play on, do they need to go to smaller size grounds to boost the scoring up, or do you think it'll eventually happen on the grounds they're playing on now, or of the bigger grounds they're playing on?
No, I think you need to treat men and women's football the same, because at the moment in AFLW they've got 16 aside, so they've got 2 less players on the field, 1 per team, and that's going to have an impact. Like, I don't know why there's 16 aside. I don't know why there's no wingers. I think they were worried about congestion, but like, women are smart. We know how to play. We know how to get goals. Like, my team, not last week, the week before, it was pouring with rain on a Saturday morning, and we scored 81 points.
That's good.
Now,
really good.
And the opposition scored 18 points, because we were just running it, having fun, kicking it along the ground sometimes, picking it up, and we ended up scoring, 10 goals, 11 goals. Then the VFLW that night, they scored 4 points to 6 points. Now, they were at Port Melbourne, and I've umpired at Port Melbourne, and it is literally like a mud heap. It's a pigsty.
That middle part of the ground, I think, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. Running through that is like running through wet concrete. So we need to not just judge completely that, oh, look at that scoreline, they can't score goals. Look at the conditions of the ground. Port Melbourne is notoriously not that great. But also just have fun. Like, just kick the ball, see what happens. Like, the structures sometimes inhibit players from kicking goals, and you're just always, you have to be here, you have to be here, and you're almost scared to kick the goal, and you're like scared to be selfish and take it. Sometimes you just got to go for it. So yeah, I think for women's football, they've been given the short straw since 2017. They've been, not being able to have all the teams included. Like, the talent is there, but it's going to be different talent because they've only really been allowed to play, a lot since 2017. Men and the men's game has been literally since 1850. So, of course, it's going to be different. But you watch a women's game, if you watch AFLW, it's way smarter than AFL men's, because we know where to go to not ruin ourselves after 4 or 5 years of playing football, because we have women.
Okay, go on.
So we have women who have had children and come back and play AFL football.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just some quick fire questions. I know you're a Geelong fan, so I'm going to test your Geelong knowledge. Let's see how many you can get.
Oh dear.
The most recent premiership. Before the most recent premiership, when was the last previous premiership before 2022?
2011?
Correct.
2013. Good. 2011.
2011, yep. Jeremy Cameron, what jumper number does he wear?
Number 5, same as me.
Very good. Jumper number 1 in the men's?
Stanley.
Very good. And Brad Close, what number?
45.
Very good. Good work. Libby,
Cameron.
thanks for coming. Thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it. Have a good one, and thanks for coming on.
No worries.